are stable, socially, emotionally, get along well with their peers and all of that, statistically research bears out, have higher outcomes. And that's part of educating the whole child. That affective component measured with the cognitive is the development of the whole child. And so we see that piece out there because that's a piece some school districts have not addressed in educating the whole child. But those are just some samples. There are others that are unique to specific districts that aren't in others. But obviously, those are general headings, and the specificity comes out as we plan that is unique and specific to your school district. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think, we're financially challenged, so I think that's our start.
Okay.
I can tell you that the two board members who are not here, they did want to throw their support behind this proposal. I did speak with both of them. Any other questions?
Volunteer. Superintendent Tingley, could you clarify what volunteer means from a financial standpoint?
This is, first of all, I'm not taking questions from the audience, but I will answer that one. This is no-cost volunteer services. It's black and clear. Dr. Brony, if you want to speak to it as well.
Well, it's very important also, I serve this community and I have a high regard for this community and I want to do that again, and paying it forward and volunteering when districts are having difficulty is what I want to do. And Lincoln Way 210 is not the only district I have done it for. So, but it gives me great pleasure to do it for you because you have been partners with me during my service to this community, and I so greatly appreciate that, and how well you educated my students that left my 157C doors, as you have done well for all the other feeder districts that go into Lincoln Way 210. So I'm more than happy to do that, and it's at no cost, and it gives me a pleasure to pay that forward.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We have a motion to approve the strategic plan as presented.
So moved. Second.
First and a second. All in favor? Actually, I'm sorry, roll call. Roll call on this one.
Mr. Lulo.
Aye.
Mr. Kirky.
Aye.
Mr. Kostick.
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti.
Aye.
Mr. Kozel.
Aye. All right, moving on. Adopt the 2016-2017 budget.
Adoption for the proposed budget for fiscal year 17. There were some proposed changes. You've received the notes. There were some more changes once again today. I'll go through. We'll answer the questions that you may have. Property taxes, updated the property tax worksheet with a $52 million new construction based upon the estimate that we received from Will County. Once you receive that number, that's a pretty firm number. Lower corporate personal property taxes by $40,000 based on the estimate the state provided us. The changes amounted to $73,000 increase in the operating fund. Local revenue, we increased estimated revenue fees by $100,000. Further analysis, it was determined that the local revenue fees were too low. Last year, we did not receive as many fees as registration. We were waiting on the driver's ed waiver. This year, we won't have those issues, so fee collection should fall in the spring before the close of the fiscal year, which will add to local revenue. General state aid, we're scheduled to receive $5,266,000 in general state aid, allocated $800,000 to the O&M fund. We had allocated $1.2 million in the previous version. Mandated categorical aid, there's no changes in this area. The state should finalize their calculations by the end of October. Federal aid, updated the budget with federal claims, adding $203,000 to the budget based on final approved grant budgets. And then interest income, just computed estimated interest income based upon our projected cash flow. Under expenditures, as I noted, we calculated salary and benefits amounts on the payrolls processed through Skyward to date. Salaries went up $433,000, benefits $194,000. The benefit increase was due to open enrollment. A number of our staff turned 26, opted to take insurance for the first time. There were also additions to movement from HMO to PPO, movement from single to family. During the month of September, beginning of October, we reconcile with Shorewood Agency, and then we'll have a really good number moving forward once all the changes have been adjusted. Also charged the account codes where many staff were charged, which resulted in reducing salaries in an O&M fund by $326,000. We moved those to different accounts. Other notes: increased O&M contingency amount to $100,000 from $50,000. Once again, we hope to not have to use those. Lowered supplies by $130,000 due to mainly lower estimates for utility costs. We've done a little bit better the first 2 months than we had anticipated. Changed the accounting of some expenditure areas from purchase services to dues and fees. Increased the estimate for supplies for transportation by $100,000, and then increased special ed tuition by $200,000 to account for private placement other than District 843. And then increased the $100,000 in tax anticipation warrants as we don't know what interest we will have to pay for that final borrowing that will occur in the spring. So we would rather be conservative and come in under would be the plan. We'll do our best to answer your specific questions.
I think the one question that's already come up, and Chris brought it up, is the $5 million that's on there. Can we pull that out so this is as conservative as it can be?
We can. We can move that, and I know that
That's the five, I'm sorry.
the five for a land sale.
Yeah.
And the reason it was put on there was just for transparency, that the district is in the market to sell the land. Everyone's aware of that. We can certainly pull that off so it does not impact the bottom line. If we do sell the land, as I anticipate us amending the budget as we go through the process this year anyway, if the district is able, then that will be something that could be in an amended budget.
Chris, did you have other questions? Go right ahead.
We can do a motion or we can discuss it. Let's go ahead.
Let's discuss.
Discuss it? Discuss it.
So general state aid, the rationale for lowering the O&M fund in general state aid is because of the change in salaries and funds. We're trying to keep that fund balance positive.
Correct. We don't want to go in the red in the fund, which brings, we will have to continue to adjust our levies over the next 3 years to keep these funds balanced, as we have to pay one back. And I think I anticipate the next question. What we can do, Chris, in years moving forward, we can do TAWs in O&M rather than the ed fund to bolster O&M to loan that money back to the ed fund. So we'll be working with that over the next 3 years to pay that back.
I mean, my initial would have been actually looking at budget. You have the surplus now in transportation because we moved the I think it was $870,000
Purchase services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would think that it would make sense to move the levy around, have more of that go into the O&M.
Hear that here?
I would think you would want to move or change the levy to have more money coming into the O&M fund and having the surplus be more in the O&M fund rather than transportation.
And I think that adjustment, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong here, the adjustment's being made to levy more into O&M and less in transportation, particularly over the next 3 years to balance that out. Am I correct?
Yes.
Rich?
Okay. So that will occur.
Right. Well,
So
that'll be in the levy next Friday. You'll see adjustments to reflect this in the levy. Am I correct, Rich?
Yes, but it won't happen overnight because of the way taxes are received. It's going to take that 3-year period in order to make a full transfer, and adjustments in the levy. It's going to take time to make that occur. We have, issues with tax caps and new construction being a driving factor in the whole levy process. That's why.
Talking Mike. There you go.
Is it on?
There you go.
As I was saying, it's going to take the 3 years because of the way the taxes are received, the way the levy operates, and the many factors that account into it, mostly in the new construction. And then when you have tax caps pressing down on top of everything, you can't make it happen. There's no way to increase the O&M fund by $800,000 in one levy year. So that's why Dr. Tingley is saying that it's going to take a 3-year period to get to that number that we want to get to eventually, and in the same token, making the reductions in the other funds. So it's a complete overhaul of how we have looked at the levy in the past and how we're looking at it moving in the future to try and balance things out.
But we have made the adjustment in the levy that we're going to propose.
Correct. It's beginning, yes.
Anything else, Chris?
On the contingency accounts, I think there has to be some sort of process and procedure known in advance and how these are going to work. My understanding of how they work is that you cannot record entries in them and that you have to come to the board for approval to move it to another account before the money can be spent. So I want to make sure that, administration, before anything is taken out of the contingencies, has to come back to the board for approval. That's my understanding. I just want to make sure that's correct.
Yep, we'll make sure that happens.
Is that an understanding, or is that
Well,
formalized somewhere?
I'm going to check the policy. If it's not, then we can do that at the very next board meeting.
Bring that forward.
We have not had contingency budgeted in the past, so I'll make sure.
If not, can we maybe bring that with the levy? If it's not part of it, at least have the first reading of the levy. Let's not waste any time on it.
I would use the floor. The deficit reduction plan that is included in the budget is just for 1 year, and I'm assuming that's all we need to do because we're submitting a surplus.
Balanced budget, correct. And the little box says you don't have to, but then if you read the red underneath, it says if you had to the previous year, you still need to state what you did, and so that it's in there.
And just to note, we have added since the hearing, the estimated limitation of administrative costs and the reporting of public vendor contracts of $1,000 or more.
Yes.
And I think it looks like, to me, are we sure that all the public vendor contracts are on there?
We've got it. We're going to have to. We don't have any Nancy's on there, and we're going to check with our auditors to see if that's one that is part of that. But we do have Pepsi and Star Visions. We will have to double check on those.
Chris, or can I control?
No, you can turn it over.
Yes,
I
okay.
have some.
I have a question regarding the special ed, increase of $200,000. Can you explain that?
Those are for students that will be outsourced outside of 843. Those we would experience significantly increased costs both in travel and services based upon those needs. As the year goes on, we do our best to bring those students back to 843. We try to get some students who are in 843 back to Lincoln Way. And in so doing, obviously if the services warrant that, we save money in doing so. But certainly some of our some of our students need that additional support, additional help, and that outsourcing is much more expensive.
So that's a takeaway of $200,000.
$200,000, I think we'll be able to come under that, but at the same time, that's where we've been burned in the past, because if we have 2 or 3 kids that are currently in 843 have to be outsourced, that flips your budget right there.
And it's not a capacity issue. This is
It's not a capacity, it's a profound, it's a need.
It's a need, it's a special need for.
I still think we have a need to get a multi-year cash flow projection. I really feel like it now, especially with, I know on a percentage basis it's not that large, but as you look at the changes that have occurred since the preliminary budget to the current budget that we're now looking at, there were a lot of changes in salaries, which is the one thing that I think can be known in advance on how those things are going to change. And I understand that, there's some step-ups and everything that had to be factored in, but we're looking at, you take away those tax anticipation warrants, and we have fund balances of negative $6.4 million right now.
Yep.
We're projecting a surplus of $2.1 million. We're not even going to get back to positive fund balances by running these surpluses. It's going to take many years of doing that, and I think, and this goes to a point where we're talking about later, where we're talking about some of the policies and procedures. I think specifically we have to set up, and that's why I think it's important next October meeting, where we set up, we have in there, for example, fund balances, and we have to have a policy around, now that we have where we're starting from, which is negative $6.4 million, we have to allocate a certain percentage right at the beginning to building up those reserves, because as you run into here, it's going to be very hard to get those TAWs going forward. And now they want to set the rates at prime minus 1.65%, and interest rates are going up, and these costs are going to go up, and there's no room for anything that the state is going to throw at us right now. And the state, the teachers' retirement system just changed their return assumptions, which it's going to cost the state $400 million more that they're going to have to fund this year. We're in a state that hasn't had a budget in 15 months, and we have to start building that up. And obviously, we have to, look at these land sales and everything like that. But this is going to take a long time. And I was thinking 3% of revenue on an annual basis, and that would be a policy that we would put in there. And quite frankly, as I now look at it, I don't know if that's quick enough. And I think I'm going to steal Joe's thunder, but a little bit here, because he was the one talking about when we bring the budget, for approval, and we now have this budget timeline. But I think we have to come with a preliminary budget, like in January. And it has to factor all these things in, and it starts with in October. When we're talking about these financial goals, we have to have some sort of projection over the next 5 years, including CPI and tax caps, and being very conservative on the building permits and everything that's going to add to our EAV, and come up with what we think we can do. And it might be rolled into the work we do on the strategic plan, but I think it has to start in October.
And I think, and I agree with you. I think, hearing Dr. Donia's, seeing his proposal on it, one thing that kind of set me off is my thought was we needed the financial piece before we can talk about the other piece. But I think that financial piece can be a big portion of what Dr. Donia is presenting, and I think your thoughts of 3%, or whatever that number may be, and I think 3% is a little low for us to be able to dig ourselves out of this hole. I think we need to be able to have those numbers. We need to know what they are, and whether it's a flat 3% or whether it's 2% this year, 3%, whatever it is, we know what it is, and that money is set aside to be able to get rid of these tax anticipation warrants and get these dollars back in the classroom with our kids.
What I think part of the financial projections really needs to be is, obviously long term we want this, the fund balance to revenue ratio to be 25%. That's what ISB puts down. That's what's as the top tier. That's what gets you off the financial watch list by getting that up. But obviously we're not going to get there anytime soon. But what we do have to set up is what is the reserves that we need to stop having to borrow the TAWs, and what that dollar amount is.
And that dollar amount would be awfully close to that 25%. That correlation is pretty close. The way we factored, as we talked yesterday, Chris, was that that kind of 20 million, we'd have to have that 20 million at the close on June 30th to have that seed money to get us through.
So we're looking at the TAWs plus that 25 to be where we really want to be.
Well, paying those off will put us in that position. Yeah, once
Right.
we're done. Yes. Here's correct.
Just echo what Chris said, I would like to see, we had this like flurry of budget activity over the last 60 days. That should be an agenda item monthly. And not just in a treasurer's report, but in that 24 to 36 month look forward, taking into consideration CPI, anticipated EAV, interest rate environment, and all the things that are going on. Because it's fascinating right now when it's a $300,000 line item, it'll be devastating when it's a $900,000 line.
With that all being said, do I have a motion to adopt the 2016-27 budget with the elimination of the real estate off of that budget?
So moved.
I would second that.
First and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirky?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Lucetti?
Aye.
Mr. Kozel?
Aye. Policies, second reading.
Policy second reading, one of the items in the press policy update would be an organizational chart. I presented that for your review. It's a little different from what we've had in the past. I'm open to any suggestions, comments, adjustments. The other press policy that at this time I would like to defer would be the school nurse, and not the EpiPens. We'll keep the EpiPens, but the administration of the opiate, the Narcan. Right now, our deputies all carry in their belts the nasal inhibitor. Our nurses, once I'm able to get the training, get everything in place, then I can bring that back to the board. But we're not at a place ready yet for the opiate inhibitor. Yes, it's a concern. They all carry the EpiPens with them. It's bee sting, peanut allergies. But in my conversations with the nurses, they would prefer that we provide the training. Once we have that training, I bring it back to the board for approval. But in an emergency situation right now, our deputies do have the nasal spray on their belt. In any case, we always dial 911 immediately also. Other than that, if there are no questions or comments about the organizational chart, I would ask that you approve the second reading as presented.
I just have one comment. It's
Yes.
nice to see an organizational chart that makes sense. That has the community above the Board of Education and the Board of Education above the superintendent. I appreciate that.
How long for that training to take place?
Chris, we can probably get it done in just a couple of weeks. I have to go through, I've got to get the training, but then we've also got to get the prescription. And when we got the EpiPen prescriptions, it took about 2 weeks to get those.
Is there still grant that's coming available for that and everything?
We can check, I don't know.
So policy second reading, I'm going to put out there. Move on to approval of the 2016-2017 compensation report.
Compensation report was found in your backup materials. Once again, this is a formality. We must list categories of employees, their wages. That has to be displayed on the website. Once it's approved by the board, that will take place. We have 2 different categories, the certified staff and the IMRF staff. So those, as I said, are included in your backup materials. Can answer any questions, but something that by law we have to comply with once a year.
Why are, just for clarification, why are all the administrators not listed on the?
If they are IMRF, then they'll be on the Public Act 97609 compliance. If they're TRS, then they're on this one.
So they're on, everyone is on.
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve the 2016-2017 compensation report? First by Mr. Lillo, second. Second by Mr. Lucetti. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirky?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Lucetti?
Aye.
Mr. Koso.
Aye. Approval of the intergovernmental agreement for the installation and maintenance of flashing school lights for Lincoln Way Central High School on Schoolhouse Road.
This will be, Dr. Provis is back there. I believe it's an $8,000 project. Steve has been in correspondence with Will County for flashing lights, 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. As they're flashing, we set them up, we maintain them. The cost is ours, but we need permission from Will County to place those on the road. We have similar flashing lights along Route 30. It would be my recommendation that we enter into the intergovernmental agreement and that we maintain those lights. It's an initial cost of $8,000.
From someone who took that corner many, many times, coming in and out of here, heading that direction, I think it's used to it.
I think it's a good idea. Just so after school, right now, it appears you have a number of deans or assistant principals out at that location. Is that going to change how you dismiss students from that?
No, we still need to assist the buses and students getting out onto Schoolhouse. What it's going to do is in the morning and in those afternoon times be more of an alert that you're in a school zone, and just makes you more aware of your speed limit when the light's flashing right at you. But we'll still continue to use our staff to dismiss students at the end of the day.
And is it before the curve?
Steve, help me out. The first one is,
Right after you pass the viaduct.
yeah, so it's on this side of the viaduct.
Correct, but we'll have two lights. One will be when you're heading north and obviously one when you're south. And then the flashing lights will just remind everybody, slow down. It'll be 25 miles an hour when those lights are blinking. Safety of students, community members, it's been a long time coming.
So it's underneath, once you come under the viaduct, so it's on the other side there.
Do I have a motion to approve, or I'm sorry, more discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement for the installation and maintenance of flashing school lights for Lincoln Way Central on Schoolhouse Road?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Lulo.
Aye.
Mr. Kirking.
Aye.
Mr. Costick.
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti.
Aye.
Mr. Koso.
Aye. Another one, long time coming. Approval of board docs, pro paperless governance solution.
Well, I would like to propose that we move to board docs to get rid of this mostly. Linda's done the legwork on this. She's talked to a number of other districts that utilize board docs. We've had conference calls between Linda, Dr. Murphy, and the people at board docs for $12,000 a year. It would take care of all of our boards, committees. It has all the features that we would need to go paperless in terms of moving forward. It would cut costs on reams of paper. It would cut costs in the travel of delivering the board packets, and then the ease of use and the ease of communication.
Like I said, it's a long time coming. I mean,
Right, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a proponent of this, and I looked at a lot of other districts that use this specific software, but, I mean, utilization of this, I mean, it's important. It goes to kind of one of the public comments.
Yes.
Everything will be posted.
Prior to the board meeting.
I'm sorry, I should take that. Everything that is not confidential.
Correct.
Will be posted prior to the board meeting, and there will be different levels where the board members can get everything, and then the public can get what is
Appropriate. Yes, absolutely.
And then you'll go back and put the minutes out there and everything like that. So this will also, I would think, cut down a lot on voids.
That's the plan. I mean, that's also a consideration that the day after the board meeting, what we're able to release, it's put on there. You know, it's finished. Yes.
And all the presentations and everything that are
Everything's on there. Yes.
So the real question is, when does this start?
Could take about 6 to 8 weeks after approval.
So
not tomorrow?
Yeah, not tomorrow, but.
Certainly by the after.
Yes, and they'll come out and train each one of us. And
Yes, they'll spend time with board members as well.
For the board.
And when I was reading through it, there's Board Docs Plus, and obviously it's a higher cost. And it seems like the only thing it allows you to do is, multiple public governing bodies, but we can do all of our committees without upgrading to the Board Doc Plus.
Yes, for the $12,000, Board Docs Pro, we can do all of our committees, all of our minutes, all within that dollar amount range.
And administration's recommendation is for the 12,000.
Yes, $1,000 a month. There are a lot more. I don't want to say bells and whistles. Help me out here, Linda. There's a lot more support associated with that level than just posting the. If we were just going to post it in a folder and put it on the web, we would need to go Board Docs. But this allows minute taking, the votes that take place, everything
You'll be able
in real time.
You'll be able to go back and search policy. Let's say, for instance, you want to know what is the policy associated with that. You'll find that, in Illinois and in other states as well. We'll also be able to load all of our other board meetings, minutes, and agendas and packets on, so then you can go back and search that as well, and the public can do that too.
Does this come with, a lot of them that have Board Docs, you mentioned policies, but is that, we can put our policies and then they're searchable?
Absolutely,
Yes.
yes.
Absolutely.
And then we can compare them.
We can compare them back and forth. One other thing that we've discussed with administration is that this does not involve the purchasing of any computers for board members or anybody at this table here. We will have computers at the table, but they will be, the computers that we already have in staff, and we will use our own at home to do our review in that. So there is not going to be a hardware cost.
Right. And you could use any device. You could use your iPad or your phone, wherever you're at.
Thank you. So can I get a motion to approve Board Docs paperless governance solution at $12,000 a year?
And the initial start.
And the initial startup fee could be as well.
So moved.
Second.
First and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirking?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Luchetti?
Aye.
Mr. Kozel?
Aye. All right. Approval of the asphalt pavement evaluation plan and roof replacement evaluation plan.
Well, we had gone out and received a fee proposal from DLA to do a survey of our roofs and our parking lot. And this is something Rich Wilkie had worked with DLA. They did a similar study for Homewood Flossmoor. They've done others. Now, we have a study from our roof company. We have our Rich's recommendations. We have the actual life expectancy of our roofs, and we can plan those out. If we want a free survey, we could have another roof company do it. The same with our asphalt. We can get a number of asphalt companies to come out and give us surveys, and we'll do it for nothing. So that's certainly an option. A third party would be our architect to come and do it. There's costs associated with this, but there are no costs of the construction tied into this. Some architects will say, okay, we'll come do this at 10% of the cost of doing the roofs or whatever. This is just a straight them coming out and providing a service to the district as our architect at the price of, I think it was not to exceed, not to exceed combined, was it 25? Okay, not to exceed 25. This, 25,000. So it would be, asphalt evaluation report would be 8,500, and then a roof evaluation report would be 16,500. I believe this would be valuable as a third party. At the same time, if the board would rather have us bring in another roof company, another asphalt company, and get surveys, we can do that as well. Rich can answer any particular questions. He's dealt with this in the past. I'm new, as we haven't replaced or fixed any roofs or asphalt in a while. Well, go ahead, Rich.
Can we get Rich's opinion?
Yeah, Rich, step on up there.
Basically, with the roofing, start with the roofing. We have two different current roofing plans. One is called the 20-year cycle plan. Basically, with that built-up roof, like the ones that are typical on our school
Can you
buildings.
talk a little louder, please?
Sure.
There you go. Thank you.
The roof comes with a 15 to 20-year warranty, at which time you would opt to restore the roof, which means you would strip the ballast, reflood coat, reballast the roof, and attempt to get another 15 to 20 years of life out of it. So we call that the 20-year cycle, and then after the 40 years, you would expect that you would have to replace the roof. In order for us to get current with the 20-year cycle today, we would have to spend about $4 million over the summer to get back into that best practice of restoration and replacement.
Wow.
The second plan is the deferred maintenance plan, which is pretty much where we are. We have roofs that are 40 years old that don't leak, and we have roofs that are 20 years old that do. A survey from an architect would help us strategically plan which roofs need to be replaced based on condition rather than life expectancy. Stretch out the roof work over the next 15 to 18 years, spending probably $750,000 a year on roofs. By that time, west and north will be ready for a restoration.
Why do you?
They're our architect. We can't negotiate with other architects unless we choose a new architect. And the process, Rich can speak to this. I mean, we can go through the process of selecting a new architect. We would want to do it after the 10-year life safety survey, but only then could we negotiate prices with another architectural firm. It's the way the laws are written.
Are there any other specialists other than an architect that could do this?
Rich, go ahead.
Sure, our roofing manufacturer is
Other than somebody that would actually provide the service?
Conflict of interest.
There are other consultants out there, I'm quite sure. There are probably even some companies out there that will, like Dr. Tingley talked about, that will come and do a free survey, but they want to have part of the construction management and the design process. Or, to be honest with you, I trust our company, Tremco Roofing. We've had success with them in the past. We have worked on a plan with them, the plan that I just spoke of. It's just that bringing a professional to do a scientific analysis, roof cores, infrared scans of the roofs, is a way to really strategically plan which roofs we do first to maximize our dollars and protect the building.
And Rich, I know we talked about this in the Building and Finance Committee, and it was agreed upon to bring this forward to the board here. A couple of things that we talked about was the expertise that DLA has, because they have all the plans and they don't have a horse in the race per se with anybody else who would be doing it for free. Correct? That's
correct. Also, we were able to get a spot check on DLA when we got a proposal for our 10-year life safety. We were able to find other school districts who had recently gone through that, and they reported back their prices per square foot, and ours was well under what the current going rate is with DLA. We feel that we trust them.
Other discussion.
I want to make sure this is all 4 buildings?
Central and East.
Central and East.
Central and East. Questions?
Dangerous question after we did this. Is this in the budget?
This would come out of the capital budget. And that's something we're going to have to talk about in October in terms of moving forward. Our capital improvements, any of these types of surveys, roofs, life safety, the board's got to make a determination. Do we spend out of the $5 million, or do we budget for capital improvements in the current budget, or a hybrid of both? So in terms of being budgeted, no, but we don't have roof work in the budget, we don't have parking lots in the budget, and so that would have to be brought back to this board for consideration as to how we want to move forward. I know Chris has discussed that as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on this are, I mean, to get back to fiscal health, eventually you're going to have to include, some capital project budget in there. We don't have that right now, so I think it has to be kind of a hybrid approach, and I think, kind of laying out these projects would be helpful, and, you have the $5 million that's in there right now. I would not say you spend that down right away, because, I mean, there could be an emergency that comes up or something like that, but, I mean, I think you have to plan on, okay, if it's going to take us 5-6 years for that to get back to where we have to build up the reserves, and then we have to start, also including the capital budgeting needs. So, I mean, I think it would be helpful to have this kind of laid out. I mean, $25,000 is a lot of money, but again, you're talking about something that's going to cost millions. So you want to do it.
And I think the one thing going forward too is we've talked about that capital improvement plan, and we've seen some drafts of it as we've been talking about it, and that's something that's going to come through the building committee. And I think that the board has discussed about assigning to that building committee and developing and working on it here very soon.
One more maybe obvious question. Will we see the results of the survey at this group?
Absolutely. This will help kind of pick a lane, so to speak, in terms of timing. Absolutely.
So do I have a motion to approve the asphalt pavement evaluation plan and roof replacement evaluation plan as presented?
So moved.
First, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call, please, Linda.
Mr. Lulo?
Aye.
Mr. Kirby?
Aye.
Mr. Costick?
Aye.
Mr. Lucetti?
Aye.
Mr. Kozel?
Aye. All right, moving on to informational items. Report of the Lincoln Way Special Education District 843 Governing Board. Mr. Lulo.
I attended that meeting. It was pretty much business as usual, but something that they did, which I would hope we would incorporate in the future. We had a regular meeting, we adjourned that meeting, and then had our public hearing for the budget at that point. Conducted that, then closed that meeting and went back to our regularly scheduled meeting. Whether it's the community, whether it's us, it's just nice to get it all done in one night as opposed to coming back on separate nights. So just something to kind of tuck in our toolbox and see what we're going to do for the future. But other than that, business is pretty much as usual there in 843. All is good, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Tigley, FOIA requests.
FOIA requests, if I can refer you to the memo found in your backup packet with Dr. Murphy. Since March of 2016, he's answered 435 different requests. Considerable amount of time from August 20th, 2015 to September 12th, 2016. The district has answered 815 FOIA requests. And here is a list of some of the top requesters, as well as the summary of requests since the last board meeting.
Moving on to legislative reports.
None at this time.
Right. Building and grounds report. Can't get away that quick, Rich.
At your places.
Sorry, at your places,